Everybody here that's here? All right. All right. Let me get the thing going on. All right, Kathy, I am ready.
Okay, on record.
Hello and welcome to the City of Lincoln City Budget Committee meeting. Today is Monday, April 20th, 2020. It is 6 p.m. and I would like to call to order this meeting. May we have a roll call, please?
Dick Anderson?
Yes.
Larry Armstrong? Larry, can you unmute? Larry must not be. I'll come back to him. Judy Casper? Judy, you have to unmute. Here. Thank you. Estel Harlan? Here. Deanna Hinton? Deanna? Can't hear you.
Sorry.
It's good practice. It's good practice for me to wait. Riley Hoagland.
Here.
Kevin Hohenbaum.
Here.
Diane Coos.
Here.
Rick Mark.
Here.
Chester Norikis.
Here.
Nancy Oxenholt.
Here.
Mitch Parsons.
Here.
Elaine's excused. Susan Walke.
Here.
And Larry Armstrong. Larry, can you unmute? Larry, can you hear us? Okay, I guess Larry's not there.
If he comes in, hopefully we can just admit him at that time. All right, so thank you very much. Next item is the election of chair and vice chair. I'd like to open the floor to nominations for chair of the budget committee. Yes, Ms. Hinton.
I move to elect Riley Hoagland as chair of the city budget committee.
I second it.
I see the hands, Deanna and Judy. Thank you. We have a motion from Ms. Walke and a second from Ms. Oxenholt. Any other nominations for chair of the budget committee? All right, I'd entertain a motion to close the nominations for chair of the budget committee. With hands. Mark.
I move that we close nominations for chairman of the budget committee.
All right. A second?
Second.
That it? That Judy?
What?
Did you second Mr. Mark's statement?
No, but I will. I second it.
You guys are awesome. All right. Entertain a motion to nominate myself as chairman of the budget committee. Mr. Hohenbaum?
I move that we have Riley chair of the budget committee.
Thank you, sir. And a second?
Second.
Ms. Walke, very much. Thank you. All right. All in favor of myself as chairman of the budget committee, please say aye.
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 And all opposed? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'd like to open the floor for nominations for the vice chair of the Lincoln City Budget Committee. Yes, Ms. Casper.
I'd like to nominate Susan Walke.
Very nice. Have a motion. And
Second that.
I think
I used the hand.
Ms. Coos. All right. Ms. Coos, let's put her on the second there. All right. Any other nominations? Any other nominations for vice chair of the budget committee? All right, hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to close nominations for the vice chair of the budget committee.
So moved.
Mr. Hohenbaum. Second from, I think, Ms. Coos.
No, but I'll do it.
Oh, who was it this time? Is it Ms. Hinton? It's hard to see.
I said second.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Harlan. All right. And all in favor of when are we closing it? Where are we at now? I forget.
We're electing you.
Oh, this for Ms. Walke. All in favor of electing Ms. Walke as Vice Chair of the Budget Committee, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Good. You guys are great. Thank you for the smiles and laughs. Mr. Chandler, I'd like to now hand this over to you, sir. Get it in order.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, let me make one suggestion on as far as our agenda goes, and that's when you look at, we combine E and F into one item, and G and H just into the public hearing. Okay. All right, I am going to take over your screens. I feel a little bit like the Outer Limits where I get to take over your screen. And you should have up on your screen the for public comment at lincolncity.org. Again, this is just a reminder, there is a public hearing at the end of the presentation, and anyone who would like to comment may do so by sending their comments to this email, and I will read them at the end. Just one other note of the Zoom on how we'll go forward. I will use this button a lot. Wait a minute. You can't see it. Anyways, I will be using an arrow button as a way to highlight what I'm going to be pointing to. It's actually something that you would also be able to use on your buttons. If you go at the top, the screen will come down. If you go to annotate and you want to highlight something, you want to circle something and say, look at this, you're able to do that as well on the screen. Okay, budget message. Much of my budget message is that this was an odd year to prepare a budget. It came right during the middle of a pandemic, and a pandemic that we're still in, and it has made estimating our revenues and where we're going to be very difficult. So I want to take a few minutes to just talk about what actions the city has already taken and how those may or may not have affected the upcoming budget. First of all, let's talk a little bit about loss of revenue that the city is experiencing because of this pandemic. The largest area where we're seeing that loss, of course, is in the transient room tax revenue. This hit right at spring break, which was when the hotels, motels, and other lodging facilities were closed. The estimated loss per month that we will see in the transient room tax is $635,000. That affects directly parks, administration, police, streets, park maintenance, and Explore Lincoln City. If you recall from the city's charter, our funds are divided up directly into those different categories. It also has an indirect effect on all parts of the budget. The second area where we're seeing the loss is in the community center revenue, which we are estimating that will be about $38,000 per month. It affects the community center, rec kids, and other recreation programs. One area which we initially did not anticipate, but it has come to light in our projections, is the loss to the water and sewer revenue. What we're seeing once so many businesses close down is that the volume of water that is being run through our system and run through our sewer system is about 45% lower than it was at this time last year. In the area of the water rates are based on two factors. The first factor is there is a base rate of which everybody pays no matter how much water they use. And both the water and sewer are based on the water meter running. In the water, that average monthly amount for May and June last year was about $188,000. In the sewer, that was about $175,000. The second factor in our revenues for water and sewer is the overage amount, where people will pay a certain amount based on how many gallons they use. Again, as we look at the average for May and June last year, in the water, that came out to about $120,000. And in the sewer, it came out to about $141,000. We don't know the full impact, but we are expecting in the overage that we could see $50,000 to $100,000 in each fund as a loss of revenue. So those are the areas where we are getting hit the hardest. There are other areas where we are also seeing a little bit of a decrease, and one of those is in the planning department revenue. Any questions before I leave this slide?
Holmbaum has a question.
Yeah, Ron, could you clarify? I kind of got scrambled there. Are you projecting it's 50 to 70,000 a month for each the water revenue and the sewage revenue for loss?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. In order to deal with this, the city immediately began looking for ways in which we could cut our budget for the last quarter of this year. That is either through actual cutting of costs or delaying of projects. Now, we did that for a couple of reasons. The most important reason was to actually try to protect the beginning fund balance for this year. Nobody really knows for sure how long this is going to last. We're hoping that it won't last very long. But we looked at the budget and said, how much would we lose in the final quarter? And then we would make budget cuts or budget delays based on that. So our estimated amount we would lose is about $1,724,000. That covers all funds except water and sewer. Then the amount that we the amount that we were able to reduce our budget for this last quarter was about $2 million. If the economy begins to recover quicker, then by the end of this quarter, then we won't have to hold on to those cuts as much. But again, one of the most important things that we looked at doing was protecting the beginning fund balance of fiscal year 2021. So in the general fund, these are some of the cuts that we have made or delays in projects. We deferred the completion of the teen center. That included tearing down or cutting open a wall and putting in doors and opening it up. That's a $30,000 savings. We canceled miscellaneous recreation programs, $12,200. We're expecting to see about a $56,000 decrease in salaries. Mostly that's due to hourly employees that once the community center and other programs closed down, there was no need to carry those on. We delayed the demolition of the old police building and the construction of a parking lot. That's $550,000. We cut consulting fees for the library by $5,000. We restricted the library travel by $1,200. There's a little bit more that's going to come into that. It's going to affect all departments because we essentially put on hold all traveling that is done by employees. That was fairly easy to do because most places cut their conventions and everything else that they were doing. We have a library book reduction of $1,900. The police had a mobile device management software system that has been cut or delayed. This one we had a $4,000 savings in our phone. And then training, we've cut that by $3,000. We have one open position, right?
Stop you for a moment.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Helmbaum, you have a question?
Sorry, I didn't take my hand down after last time. I forgot.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chandler.
We put a general hiring freeze. I say general because there are some positions, for example, if something came open in our police department, we would move forward with that. But at the time when we put that into place, there was one position in particular, a senior planner, that we are not moving forward with the hiring of that position. And for that quarter, that comes out to $11,500. In the parks, we had $23,000 to continue some of the development of the Southeast and Keel Park. That has been delayed. $20,000 in the restroom upgrade. Parking at the Knoll and Regatta was a $40,000 project. That has been delayed, as has bus shelter improvements for $5,000. For streets, we had sidewalk improvements on Highway 101 in the Wacoma area for $110,000. These have all been delayed. These haven't been cut permanently, but they've been delayed. The Southeast 3rd Sidewalk Plaza of $10,000. The sidewalk Northeast 14th Street of $450,000. And the sidewalk project for Northwest Kill of $93,430. And finally, in the Explore Lincoln City funds, we put on hold any work towards the new visitor center, which was $300,000. Highway 101 Plaza Art Project has been put on hold. That's $125,000. We'll see a savings of about $4,000 from Finders Keepers for their summer program. That's not purchasing of the glass floats. The Kite Festival has been canceled for the spring. And then we put $131,000 that we draw from reserves. Ed has looked at that and said, let me see if I can do some more cutting so that I can protect those funds for the next year. So he's working on making some cuts instead of having to draw on his reserves. So those are the things that we implemented already as a result of the pandemic. Again, if the economy were to recover quickly, not all of these would have to be stay in effect. However, we were anticipating and looking that the effects of this would go through at least the end of June. Okay, and as I mentioned, the purpose of this was the main purpose of this was to try to protect the fund balance going into next year's budget. Any questions on some of the actions that we have taken so far as it pertains to this year?
So let's start with Ms. Walke, please.
I'm wondering about the Highway 101 Plaza Art Project. Is that the one at the Cultural Center?
No, that's the one that we were going to redo one of the two plazas in Ocean Lake. And we were going to be working with them to try to work on that. We had just started meeting with them before the pandemic hit, and then it's just put a hold on it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Holmbaum, please.
First of all, Ron, I want to say thank you very much to you and the staff for that's an impressive feat to be able to move things around and make that happen and cover that like that. Question is, the money that where you are going to be short, seems like that's not going to be able to be made up. So you said that these are all temporary on hold, and I'm wondering what's the trigger to actually making them permanent or covering these? What's the process look like there?
The ones that are really delayed are the capital projects, the sidewalk projects, and those kind of things. And what we've done is simply moved those into next year's budget. So you'll see some shifting around of projects that we would have had for next year.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Now, the area where that strikes and makes it difficult is that it shifts it around, but that doesn't necessarily mean all the money comes back in. That these are lost revenues, so it means whatever we move into next year may push something out that we had hoped to be doing next year.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. And Ms. Oxenholm? Nancy?
You,
Can't hear you. You got to unmute yourself.
can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Was anybody laid off? What are your workers from the library and the community center doing? Are they still getting paid? What is going on with that?
The only employees that are without employment right now, they have not been laid off, are our hourly employees, lifeguards. They're still employees, they're not laid off, we just don't have the hours for them to work. We have been able to keep almost all of our employees employed remotely. In some cases, we'll have skeleton crews that are at each of the facilities here at the community center, but most of them we've been able to do remotely. Now, for some that have dealt with strictly with customer service related types of things where the buildings are now closed, we've put them on projects. This has been in place now for about a month. The longer it goes on, the harder that will be to sustain. So we're fortunate that right now we've been able to keep everybody employed and busy, but if this continues, then we could be facing things like layoffs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hinton?
Sorry, I just wanted to say to Ron and Debbie and everyone who had to, I guess I'm just would like to reinforce what Mr. Hombaugh said. These are significant things. These are things we were all looking forward to that were cut, and I just appreciate the hard work it took to do that. And also, I wanted to thank Nancy for asking that question, because that was one that's been worrying me as the employees and how we're able to keep them busy and keep them employed. So I appreciate both those comments. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to stop share this for a moment and bring up another screen. So give me just a second, make sure I get it right. Okay, you should be seeing page 7 of the budget. Is that what everybody sees? Okay, great. And the public comment at lincolncity.org is showing up on the bottom, right? Okay, wonderful. So as I mentioned, one of the features that I found in Zoom that I really like is an arrow pointing feature. And so you will see me do, can you see where the arrow is? That's how I will be referring to different places in the budget. One of the things that was really odd in doing this is how to make a presentation where most of you need to be much more visual than vocal, and how to follow this, both with you and anybody who may be watching this. So with that, I'm going to jump right into just our general revenues and highlight a few things. First of all, one of the significant things that you'll see in this budget is a very large increase to the tune of about $1.5 million spread throughout the budget for an increase in the FIRST payments. FIRST is the Public Employee Retirement System. Last year, or the fiscal year that we're in now, the state made an offer that if we would buy down our liability that we have by participating in this, they would match whatever we did 25%. So in this year's budget, we spent $500,000 towards the matching of that, of which they paid 25%. And then in this year's budget, spread throughout the different departments, is another $1.5 million. don't want to get that in front of me. And so anyway, so the purpose again is to buy that down a little bit. That was an opportunity that we had. If you recall from last year's budget and the year before, we generally had revenues over expenses in the general fund, and we've been able to use those for capital projects. Essentially, the PERS payment has used up that excess of revenues over expenses. Now, I also might point out as we look at revenues that this is based on the COVID-19 pandemic ending by July 1st and things returning to normal. One of the things that made this budget a little bit difficult is that if it doesn't end, then we have already started identifying projects, expenses that even though the budget's approved, the staff will not have the permission to begin spending those funds. And what we've done is basically looked out 6 months through the end of the calendar year for anything that we could put on hold or to cut in case the revenues don't go forward. So again, a very odd way to put together a budget without having certainty as to what your revenues are going to be like.
Have we looked at not doing the full $1.5 million into this?
The budget includes it. If you would like to change it, then you are welcome to do that.
I would like to bring that up for discussion for sure. Yes, Mr. Mark.
I was wondering that PERS payment, there was some question about whether that qualified for the 25% credit from the state, or was that used up or something? I forget what I heard about that.
It did get used. Debbie, do you want to answer that? I just saw your...
Yeah, we had a total of $2 million available to us. We used that they would match which on top of that, and so we used a quarter of it in this year. And so what we have in the budget is to take full advantage of the remaining match that's available. Did that answer your question?
No, I'm not clear. So if we pay that 1.6 million, we get credit from the state for 25%? Yes. We do, okay.
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Casper.
Do we have projections? Suppose we didn't pay that 1.5 million. Do we have projections in years to come so we have money to cover it year by year?
We do, and Debbie's going to go to that in just a few minutes. Once we get off this page, the next one we'll see is the savings that we will have by paying that down. Okay, so let me come back to that in just a minute. Okay. All right, you'll note that the first arrow I put down is on our contingency. If you recall, last year we had budgeted $2 million as a contingency. The budget for the 29-20, which you'll see in here, reflects amendments to the budget. So that budgeted amendment now is $1,332,000 as the budget amount for 2019 and 20. That reflects a few things. Primarily, it reflects some of the council's goals pertaining to workforce housing. We purchased some property that would go to a housing development on 25th Street that's reflected in that. And we also have a loan, an economic development loan that we are working with a group called Helping Hands to loan them those funds so that they can build a transitional housing facility or renovate a building to become transitional housing. That's what brought that fund balance down from its original budget of $2 million. Now, I also should point out that all of the revenues and expenses that you're seeing in here reflect some of the changes that we've seen from the savings. Okay, the next thing I wanted to point out is the total resources. The estimated overall general fund resources is below the original budget by $284,165. These estimates reflect the changes due to the loss of revenue and the decrease in the expenditures that we had just discussed a few moments ago. coming down to the unappropriated fund balance. Again, you'll recall that if you look to just the left of this, that was combined into two groups. This combines it back into one. This is the estimate. This is what we were trying to protect, okay? I bring that up so that you can see that this is what we were trying to protect, so that it becomes the beginning fund balance or a revenue source for this fiscal year, which you can see. Sorry, I got that backwards, but you can see on that $8,128,000. Okay, you'll also note that the total resources for the general fund are budgeted to be just a little more than $1 million less than last year's budget. This again is primarily due to a little bit of the lowering of the beginning fund balance. When I'm looking at total expenditures, overall, the general fund expenditures is budgeted to be $1,342,126 below last year's budget. A large part of this is due to the reduction in the City Hall operations, which is right here, and transfers out, which we'll discuss later as we go through transfers. Those transfers went into the facilities capital fund and were used for capital projects last year. Those are the primary causes for the total expenditures to be less than last year. And then finally, on this page, please note that the contingency, we've tried to keep that at about $2 million. That's also been a bit of our buffer zone and for against inflation. And because again of some of the purse buy down and some of the other expenses, we're projecting that contingent to be $1.73 million. Now, one of the most important things to mention is that there are things before the City Council over the next week that may have a significant impact on this budget. Before you even adopt it, you may see these impacts. The City Council on next Monday's budget will be considering a COVID-19 aid package that would help both residents and businesses. They're looking somewhere between the amount of $1 million to $1.25 million. That amount would be split between two funds, the Explore Lincoln City Fund and the General Fund. So where you would see that change is again in the beginning fund balance for next year. So
Mr.
another
Chairman,
one of the, yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman, may I stop you there, please? Ms. Walke, yes.
I had a question about the City Hall operations and why it was just under 400,000 for a couple of years, and then this last year went up to 916,000, but we only spent 2/3 of that, and then next year it's back down to lower than it was.
Debbie, do you want to address that?
Yes, part of what's in there in the City Hall operations, that's what we used to call our general non-departmental. We have the donations for outside agencies, and we had that really high for a couple years, or 1 year. And this is in the 1920, we have 350,000 in there for the Helping Hands loan. But the big reason why it went up is because we did a large, if I remember right, we did a large amount on the outside agencies. Let me find that. Hang on just a sec.
Can that be also be the 500,000 for the PERS? Like come out of there? No.
That is in the budget, yes. So that is one difference in the budget. There's 300,000 for the PERS match is in City Hall operations, and I've got it in the estimate. I've actually got it in the department. So yes, that's the main variance between budget and actual.
Thank you.
While she's looking that up, I forgot to mention perhaps the most important thing. Our intent tonight is to get all the way through the sewer budget or 9 o'clock, whichever comes first.
Well, while we're on that, let's go ahead and say that 7:45, 7:30, we could stop.
Yes, sir.
10 minutes. Okay, thank you, Ron.
While Debbie's looking that up.
Sorry, my Adobe file kind of went blank. I have to open it up again.
While she's looking that
Actually,
up,
you can.
what you'll see on the screen next, and Debbie's really going to be the one to go into this. Can you read that okay, or I need to enlarge it?
I think, yeah, probably enlarge it. Thank you.
Yeah.
In the budget book on page 115 and 116, there's a line level detail for that City Hall operations, so you can see kind of which lines changed a lot. Our contribution to outside agencies in 18-19 was $150,000, and this year it's budgeted at $400,000. That's because of the Helping Hands. What else is in there? Yeah, and the other one is the PERS, $300,000 for PERS.
Thank you, Debbie. I see that now.
Sure, you bet.
Okay, I'm going to keep Debbie talking. Councilor Casper asked about the impact of the buy down by the and the matching by the state. What you see in here are the saving calculations, and Debbie ran this information for me, so I'm going to let her explain it.
So this is the top section with the two lines. This is the city contribution in the PERS match. In the current fiscal year, we contributed. We did a $500,000 contribution, and PERS did $125,000 match for a total of $625,000. And then in the proposed budget, we have almost $1.6 million with a PERS match of almost $400,000. The second section this is based on the modeling tool that the state provided. It is their estimated. The first column is our estimated PERS costs if we did not do any of the matches. The second column there that says savings fiscal year 1920, that's the savings we will get in each year from the contribution that we made this year from the $500,000. And in the next column will be the savings that we would get from the $1.6 million that's in the proposed budget. And then if you add the two together, the total savings is just the two together. So if we made the contribution that's in the proposed budget, we would save $4.5 million over an 18-year period according to the state's projection tool. And one of the reasons why this is the other reason I'd like to add why this is important is because if you look at the general fund long-term forecast, we have a challenge ahead of us long-term in that our expenses grow faster than our revenues, and this is one way that we can use to help the future, be able to fund the future by reducing our costs in the future.
Okay, I'm headed to the next page. Any questions on that?
Yes, Mr. Mark.
Thanks. Yeah, back to that page. I guess I'm not clear on why the payment that we made, the $500,000 payment we just made, and the 1.6 we could possibly make this year. Why does that yield accrued savings over time? That makes sense.
because we have a very large PERS debt. I think it's about 10 million, if I remember correctly, currently, or at the end of the last fiscal year. And we have to pay it. And the way that's been planned to pay it is through higher and higher and higher rates. I mean, the PERS rates are just jumping astronomically every other year. And so if we go ahead and pay off some of that debt now, then they'll add some money to the pot, and which further reduces the amount of debt that we'll have to pay in the future. So our PERS rates that we're paying not only pay for our current employees, they pay for the debt that we owe on
Casper?
people that are retired now.
But if these projections go out 18 years, and we set aside money for each year as we go through the years, rather than taking this, $1.5 million now, will we still be able to make the PERS payments annually?
The increases are, it will get to a point.
The answer to that question is yes, but how we do it, we don't know quite for sure.
What we'll have to do to fund it, we don't know. Yeah, will we get to the point where we'll have to reduce staffing? It's definitely going to affect capital projects. It's going to affect the money that's available in the future to do other things.
We owe $10,734,760. Now, what's important to note is that is if the city shut down today, we laid off every single employee, we would still owe that money. Okay, this is based. We participating with the state retirement program, and they are in the red. And our portion of what they're in the red is that $10,754,000. When we make a payment in each month, as we make our payments, a portion of that goes for the cost of the retirement now, but it also to pay off that debt. So the sooner we pay off that debt, the greater savings we'll see, because our rates will be reduced, because the amount that the rates are based on are both future and backwards. Future, what is going to be our obligation to employees going forward, and the $10 million is our obligation going backwards.
But those are still projections. We don't know how many employees this will encompass in the future years. And
correct.
How many years do we have to pay $10 million back? Forever? Ad nauseum, or what?
No, we have to pay $10 million back.
By when? By when?
Period.
Until all of the tier 1, tier 2 people retire.
So we have years to pay it off as we go along.
Yes.
I mean, I'm saying okay.
Think of your credit card. You can pay it all off now if you have a windfall, or you can pay it off over time.
But it seems like, given the current pandemic situation, the state hadn't counted on this. Would they revive this program when our situation was more stable?
Right.
Is that an option, or a possibility, or maybe?
I think the question that you're probably asking is that will they offer this kind of a match in the future? And the answer is we don't know. Within a very short period of time, the amount they set aside for matching was already, there were more applications for it than the money available. Debbie got on it very quick, and so we were very fortunate to have this opportunity. But whether or not the state will provide more funds is anybody's guess.
Okay.
Ms. Hinton.
So my question is this. So with the pandemic and all the things that the state is looking at funding right now, is this secure funding our 25% match? Or do we have any idea if they'll be pulling those funds for some other use?
Right.
Debbie?
I have not heard anything about them pulling it. I would be really surprised if they did, but I mean, I don't know.
And I want to say that looking at that chart about how much we're paying and how much it will get us in the future, it's really a good deal to go ahead and do this, as much as we need funding for other things. I think looking at the city as a whole over long term, I think it's a great benefit to us. And so I would be in favor of continuing on the path we've taken, although I can think of 5 other ways to spend that money. I think that putting it in the bank when we have this big opportunity is well worth us tightening our belts a little bit.
I am very concerned for the future of the general fund, not the immediate future, but the longer term future. Given 6, 7, 8 years from now, if we don't do some sort of cost containment or revenue increase, we are going to have we're going to be in serious cut mode, and every year is just going to get a little bit worse. That's why I like this so much, is because this helps us in the future. It's the same kinds of things that the council did years ago that generated the revenue that we're enjoying now. Annexing Rhodes End and doing an urban renewal. The reason we have some monies to spend is because of those actions that were taken years ago. And
all right, Ms. Casper, do you have another statement? Judy?
What?
Do you have something else?
No. Did I have my hand up? No.
Yeah, all right. Mr. Mark?
Yeah, I just wanted to second what Deanna just said. I would rather look to delaying capital projects if possible, rather than not paying down this PERS money, because all the reasons that Debbie and Deanna just laid out, I agree with them.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chandler, have we, are there other cities that don't participate in PERS?
there are some.
I think so, but I don't know who they are.
It'd be interesting to see the difference in if we did not maintain this with PERS, knowing that, yes, we have an amount to meet, but then moving forward, because we don't know how that's going to be, what that is, or how other cities, or if there's anybody else who were part of PERS and said, you know what, let's mismanage money, and the $10 million that I owe is a little bit too much. We're gonna pay you, but then go to look somebody else. Is that something that's ever been done?
We'll check on that and find out.
Appreciate that.
Okay, the next page is page 8 of your budget. I've put an arrow on showing what total revenues. The point I need to point out on this is that this is total revenues without the beginning fund balance. That's
down. Make that a little bit bigger, Mr. Chandler, please.
What's that? A little bit bigger?
Yeah. It's reduced, again, once it's on our screen. Thanks. All right, very good. Thank you.
I'm not sure I can do that and still get the things.
What, the annotations?
Yeah.
Okay. If you can't, then you can't. Yeah.
This page is in your budget books. If you want to open up the paper and look at it, it might be a little easier to see.
This budget book?
Yeah. Sure. Just a minute. Okay, sorry about that. I think I'm going to have to leave it at that size.
Okay, thanks for checking anyway.
Okay, the second item that I wanted to point out is that number right there. The total revenue is forecasted to increase 3% each year, with the exception of fiscal year 21-22, which is forecasted to increase by 4%. That's due to the urban renewal sunsetting. Okay, if you recall that right now, of the taxes that are associated with the urban renewal district, we receive 80% of that. The remaining 20% begins next year. these are some of the things that like Debbie's talking about, where there's an infusion of new cash and how they become important as you go forward. The next item is the $13,675,495 total operation in fiscal year 22-23. This is the point that Debbie was bringing up. Our revenues are increasing by 3%. However, our expenses are increasing at a 5% rate. And the result of that is, first of all, primarily the reduction of that revenue over expenditures that we've had fun with in doing capital projects. You can see that by the time we hit fiscal year 25-26, that's down to $175,000. That's much quicker than the inflation rate. And so, as Debbie had mentioned, this is an issue we'll have to deal with as we go forward and look at to make sure that our funding sustains itself. The other result of that, of course, is you see how your beginning fund balance is decreasing each year, so that where you're at this year in $8,120,000, by the time you hit fiscal year 26, you're at $5,436,000. That's below the rainy day fund that we have tried to create. That's provided opportunities for us right now to be able to use those funds to help when the economy has turned bad. So again, just as an illustration of what Debbie has been stressing and what we'll be facing. Okay, any questions on the general fund forecast before I leave this page?
Ms. Oxenholt, yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my question, I'm sorry, was on page 7.
Okay.
One before that.
Mm-hmm.
And just wondering why city administration costs went from $687,000 to $792,000. Over $100,000 increase.
Part of that is a staffing change. We had one of the positions there voluntarily went from full-time to part-time for how long was that, Ron? A year or so?
Yeah.
And it was included in the 1920 budget as part-time. That person left, and we rehired that back at a full-time position, which it had always been at, except for this year. That's one part of it. And the PERS match would be part of it as well. Let me find the amount of that. I got to open my file. Should have had it open, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. It caught my eye that much.
Yep.
Seemed like a lot.
Yes.
As we're trying to cut costs.
Yeah. It compares a little better to prior years.
One of the things that you'll see as we go through each of these departments is we're pointing out what is the PERS impact. Because it's not like we've done something else where we've transferred it and it shows up in another fund as one big expense. Because of it, for accounting purposes of applying it to where the funds are, where the funds are being expended, employees' salaries are carried, it gets spread out through everything. So with each section we go through, we'll point out how much of the increase is due to PERS.
Okay.
Okay, so that position change is about maybe $35,000. The PERS match that's in this fund or this department is $65,000. So that's about $100,000 right there.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, I'm on page 9. The first thing that I want to point out in the let's see, where'd my thing go? The first thing that I want to point out so that you see as you look at general fund revenues are all of these that say TRT funds. Parks, review, admin, police, all of these are affected by the transient room tax. And if we find that the recovery from the pandemic that we're in, it goes into this next fiscal year, those estimates will be affected by that. Okay. The other one that I wanted to point out, and I don't know that this is actually related to the pandemic, but we are seeing a decrease in our permit fees. I think this is more due to it's going back to its historical norms. Over the last couple of years, we've had some very, very big projects. The police building was one. The firehouse was one. The hospital was one. We had a hotel that was expanded. So we had we had quite a bit of influx due to those big projects. So I think what you're seeing in this is just a return more to its historical level. Okay. Any questions on page number 9 before I leave this? Okay, on page 10, the two items that I would like to point out in particular, one which has been of great interest is the marijuana tax revenue. We're continuing to see an increase in that revenue. $180,933 is the budget for this year. Last year, that was used in the parks. This year, there's really kind of two uses that we've identified that I needed to point out. The first is in the area of our parks and open space. We're continuing to run into problems of illegal camping and creating very difficult campsites to clean. They range anywhere from $12,000 to about $20,000 to clean up per site. There's often needles and feces and all sorts of
So, hold on 1 second. Just got some demon stuff coming through. So, Mr. Chandler, you were talking about the need to spend money to clean up the camps. And Mr. Holmbaum, I believe, has a question as well.
My question actually was on the previous page. What's the process for adjusting franchise fees? You know, when you talk about the city potentially needing some additional revenue in the future, how do we go there?
So the franchise fees are the total amount, or the percentage amount is stipulated by the state, and I believe in all cases we are at the maximum amount we can apply. I will check on that to be certain, but I believe that we're at the maximum amount.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chandler,
Yes, sir.
could you speak up?
Yes, sir. Okay, coming back to this page again, I mentioned the marijuana tax. You'll see when we get into the parks and open space that $50,000 of that will be going towards illegal campsite cleanup. The other $41,000 has just simply been absorbed into the general fund general expenditures. We have not assigned it to any specific project. If you would like to do that, then we shift things around. Debbie, go ahead.
Ron, I would note, general fund does transfer almost $150,000 to the parks to help support it. So I mean, you could look at that as being funded by the marijuana tax, which then leaves only about $30,000 that the general fund's keeping.
Yeah, I could go there, but we were funding it beforehand, so.
Only for a hand, 3, 4, 5 years or so, probably since a little bit before you came. We didn't used to.
The other thing that I wanted to point out is where I put the blue arrow, which is the fire dispatching. We are in the process of increasing the amount we charge the fire company for dispatching their services. We were subsidizing them quite a bit. So essentially you're seeing about a doubling of the income we will receive from them. Okay, any questions before I leave this page?
Yes, Mr. Holmbaum.
I didn't have a question. I just forgot to take my hand down again. Sorry.
All right. So let's go, Mr. Anderson.
Yes, Debbie, have you been able to get a breakdown on the marijuana tax as far as the city's 3% tax, how much that actually is, and then how much we get from the state is shared?
I haven't looked at that. If I was supposed to do that, I totally spaced it. So I'll make myself a note to do that.
And it might just be helpful because it would give us, at least for me, a good sense of how much we don't get from the shared. Because I still think we're getting shorted.
That's a lot of money, man.
But not when the county gets 200.
It's more than the liquor revenue.
But no, I understand, but in relationship, that same product line that goes to other places, I would think with our 3% on top of a shared, we should be on the upper side.
Yeah, I'll see if I can. I'll follow up on that. I'm sorry, I forgot about that.
That's fine.
Ms. Hinton. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
I just have a comment about the marijuana tax. And last year we decided that we could use that towards the park because there isn't adequate funding. And I still think that is where the money should go. Although it goes, I understand what Debbie said, it goes into the general fund and then most of it goes back out to parks. But I'd like to see that continue because we don't have adequate funding for parks now. So that makes a big difference.
Yeah, and to speak to the marijuana dispensary shop owners, they want to see their money, in a particular place too, is what I was told, and they felt really good about it going to the parks, and so it was really, really good thing.
Okay. Any other questions before I leave page 10? Okay, page 11, two things I wanted to point out on this one. I'm not having much. So can you guys see my cursor, the little hand?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to just kind of try to use that to highlight. This annotation I'm struggling a bit with it. So the first one I want to take a look at is 4601013, which is community center revenue, $327,313. And then also community revenue membership, which is 4601014, $47,414. The reason I bring those up is that we had established a goal. I don't remember if it was just staff or if the city council joined us in this, but we have had a goal that the fees for the community center should cover 45% of its operating costs. Right now it's at about 39%. We have not historically looked at rate increases except on an ongoing basis, but more on just from year to year, from time to time. So we asked Jeannie Sprague, our Parks and Recreation Director, to look into forecast what it would take to be able to continue to fund the community center at 45%. So she's proposing, or we're proposing, I have to say say we're proposing because she wasn't very excited about it to begin with. We're proposing about a 6% increase in the fees that are associated with the community center. They're broken out over multiple different fees that they charge, and I forgot to send you a copy of those changes, but I will send those to you.
I would like to say that I'm not interested in raising the rates yet again. I know that 45% is something that we did, but I feel like every year we're raising rates, and every year we get more and more people saying, why are you raising more rates? You know, and I understand we're trying, you know, make money there, but I don't know how the rest of the committee feels. Ms. Hinton.
I agree. I think especially after the COVID-19, people are going to want to get back to working out and feeling better. And I think right now it's important to just hold the line rather than increasing the cost for them to do that.
I agree, and I understand, but at this time, right? I'm not interested. Mr. Holmbaum.
I would agree exactly with what you're saying, Riley, and especially in light of our society's obesity issues and what that costs us as a community in health issues and healthcare. That anything we can do to encourages activity is good, and anything we do that discourages it is not good.
Thank you, Ms. Walke.
I guess I'll just say I agree.
Awesome. Ms. Oxenholm?
I agree. You also have a lot of seniors that use that, and they're being hit with increased tax on different things, and water and sewer rates went up. And so I have a lot that make under $1,000 a month. So anything that goes up, they have a hard time paying for it.
Yeah, I would love to see part of the marijuana tax revenue go directly to the community center, if that more than increasing the rates. You know, personally, I feel like we could supplement in a different way than charging people more money. I mean, you know, Ms. Casper.
I just want to say I agree as well, and I like your idea about the marijuana tax, but I think it could be split with the Parks and Rec together.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Mr. Anderson or Mr. Norikis? Not sure.
It's Anderson. You know, I agree with what you're saying, and it's nice. Remember that 65% is coming from your general fund. Right. And as you, the council and budget committee, start getting excited about putting money elsewhere, you know, you're going to take from somewhere else. Because Ron just gave you the story of reduced revenues and concerns. So, you know, be thinking as we move through this, priorities, and, you know, water, sewer, police is kind of a primary, and then, you know, parks is a luxury, and we start looking at, you know, where you can cut. So, just
parks being a luxury is one perspective. Others feel otherwise.
When you're taking 60% from your general fund to operate, so all I'm saying is the alternative is, you know, those who use it could pay. And right now what you're suggesting is the citizens, the rest of the citizens, pay through their tax dollars for this subsidy. Just food for thought.
Yes.
There's no vote yet, and there's no need yet either. But
right. Thank you, Dick. Mr. Holmbaum.
I just want to challenge Mr. Anderson's statement that parks are a luxury. I disagree entirely. I think parks are, and the rec center the same way, are both requirements and quality of life. And if we grow as a city and thrive as a city, and we want our residents to thrive and be happy here, then I think that absolutely is as important as water and sewer.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mark.
I have a yearly membership at the community center. I find it very reasonable. I'm wondering how it compares, and I don't want to go into this more tonight, but how does it compare to another full year membership at competing gyms?
What I remember a few budget meetings ago is that I think we looked at it like, what's the price of going out at night. And if it's $10 or something, I think that we used like, what's the cost of a movie or something? Mr. Chandler, if you could help me remember. And I think that was at that time what we were doing, but it isn't like, that's from the luxury point of view of like, you don't need to go to the movies. And that's you don't need to go to the gym. You don't need to do that. So I think that was in that line of luxury and that it needs to be paid for by the people. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if there are other ways to, engage the community in that community center. I don't know if we've gone to members of Snap Fitness or the casino's gym or private gyms and say, hey, what would it take for you to go to the community center? What's the difference? What's holding you back? And really look at the community and saying, okay, well, it's cheaper, but why don't you use it? And I don't know what part of our outreach has been done to try to determine those things. I mean, I think there's room to figure out why we don't have more people before we say, well, we need to charge more for people to come. So.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on page 11? Okay. There's several bits of information to pull on this, but there is a philosophy question that's important to deal with, and I understand where everybody's coming from. Either raise it a little bit now, each year, or you raise it a lot of it someday, and which is the better way to go.
Or you can get more people to come by providing better services.
That's true. And we increase, that's another way, true.
Right. So it's not just two things. You charge more now or charge more later.
Sure.
Ms. Hinton.
Or you find another funding source.
I was just going there, Riley. We could encourage more pot sales so we have more funding from marijuana tax so it can go to help augment the cost.
I think there's been an 800% increase in the amount of marijuana purchasing.
Okay. Page 12.
Hold on, Mr. Taylor. Ms. Oxenholm.
I had a question on the bottom of the page. Special recreation programs was 15,000 and jumped up to 58.
53 last year. And then
that's because in the budget 2019-20, it was decided not to charge for recreation, and we understood that to be a one-time thing, and so we have the revenue back in there.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to talk about that program that we had to not charge the youth to participate in city-sponsored events and how that was. I know Ms. Sprague isn't here, but I would love to see the rates, the enrollment rates and those kinds of things, because we don't have numbers on was there more participation, was there less participation, how generally were the families, I don't see anything other than nope, and then yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Oxenholm. Nancy, did you have something? Okay, I guess not.
No, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I wondered if all that money was used.
Well, I think it was just to cover all of the whatever the number of, I don't know what it was.
We had a certain amount put aside, I thought.
It was whoever signed up for sports didn't have to pay.
Okay.
So but I don't know what that was. I don't know if there was more people, there was less people, generally better. I mean, the idea was that so that all of our residents would be able to participate, all of our residents, all of our children would be able to participate in sports at a better rate due to our very well-known low-income, child population and all that stuff. So I think that was the thing, but I don't know.
We'll ask Jeannie then.
Yeah.
So I think that if I don't use the annotation and you just use the little hand thing, that I'll be able to enlarge this a little bit. I hope that will help.
Yeah.
Okay, page 12. One item that I wanted to note.
You can make it bigger still.
Oops, sorry, I'm going around back on the page.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. That's great.
One item I wanted to note is this one here. Oh, crud, that didn't work. Thought I was being clever and it didn't work.
You're good. It looks good.
This one, right there. Debbie had already mentioned this during the urban renewal budget. That reflects the loss of that revenue from urban renewal. Not a large amount, but a loss nonetheless.
Page 12, by the way.
Page 12, yes, sir. Okay, the other thing that I wanted to note on this page is, again, looking at the ending fund balance, or looking at the beginning fund balance, which we tried to protect, is $8,120,000. Okay, that moves us to police. That finishes the general fund revenue and moves us into the police.
I'd like to, all right, let's ask. All right, Ms. Walke.
Thank you. I had a question on page 12. I'd like some information about the K-9 program. I know that this was donations. Are we going to continue to solicit public support for the K-9 program, or is the general fund going to be absorbing those costs now?
Chief, do you want to jump in on that?
Yes, we will be continuing our fundraising efforts as we go through with this, and anticipate some, if not 100% relief as we go forward with this. But new program, we don't really know for sure where that's going to lead. We anticipate, I think, running maintenance after we get everything in place this year to be under $10,000 a year to continue operations until it's time to add or replace another animal. But we do anticipate continuing efforts for fundraising.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Our chief.
Any other questions before I leave this? All right. Okay. Police. The first item that I want to note is this item, retirement, item number 6106014. You'll notice that it's increasing from a budget of $588,202 to $1,150,000. That is due mostly to the purse match. $502,295 or 44% is from the purse liability buy down. The increase in the budget for purse overall is $562,148, and as I mentioned, $502,295 is the match, or 89% of the increase is from the purse liability buy down. A couple of other items of general note. As we looked at the police budget, there is a little bit of uncertainty in a few of the expenditures because our building is increasing from 8,000 square feet in the old building to 18,000 square feet in the new building. We tried to anticipate that as best we can, but there's always a little bit of uncertainty as we look at what the expenses will be. One of the other things I wanted to note as we get into this budget, I'll use the police, but it's just generally throughout all of the departments. We're looking at about a 5% increase in the medical and dental insurance costs for the employees. Under item
Ms. Hinton.
Oh, Ron, were you going to talk about the difference in the legal services? I'm just curious about that.
I'm not sure what you mean, Counselor.
On line 6201152, legal services.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you mind? Thank you.
Yes. The legal services, you'll see it dropped from a budget of 22,000 to 2,000, but also has an estimate of 42,000. The drop is because this year's budget included hiring an attorney to help us negotiate a new union contract. And so that's what's going forward. The reason why it's $20,000 higher is that we had to have some internal investigations, the accusations that were made against various employees that had to be investigated by outside agencies. And so we had to hire some attorneys to assist us and mediators to assist us in that. And that's the cause for it being over budget this year. Also, I wanted to point out in the miscellaneous contracted services that there's an increase from 19,800 to 43,938. There are two primary increases for that. The first is the body cameras that were purchased. That has an annual maintenance cost of just under $14,000. And then this also includes the replacement of our tasers, which is $8,840. Chief, I would like you to take a moment and just talk about the effectiveness of the body cameras. This was a little bit difficult in us coming to this. There had been some resistance in the past. Chief Palmer has embraced the idea of the body cameras, and we've already seen the benefits that come from them. Chief?
Yes, just since deploying those in the field, we've managed to take a number of citizen complaints that have come in on our staff in the field. Our supervisors are able to go immediately to the body cam and or the dash cams that we've had for some time in the patrol cars. But the body cams in particular have basically taken those complaints and disproven them almost immediately. We were able to go back to the complainant and say, okay, your version of what happened isn't supported by what we're seeing on camera, and basically exonerate and defend our officers. Obviously, those can go the other way too. If we have an officer doing something they shouldn't be doing out there, that would be revealed as well. But to this point, it's been 100% the opposite way. It's exonerated our officers at every turn. Where you're going to hopefully see that this will more than pay for itself is just the incident we had 3 weeks ago in our officer-involved shooting. Those body cams are absolutely invaluable in proving what exactly happened at that scene. So between the body cams and the dashboard cams, it makes a very clean story as to exactly what happened there, which is going to result in positive results for our team that was involved in that.
We have a question from Mr. Mark.
Yeah, this might very well not belong in this part of the budget, but I was wondering, Ron, about the $500,000 that we're not spending on the demolishing the old building, and so we're delaying that. Is there going to be a point, this year where we have no choice but to go ahead and do that, or is that something we can delay for a long time? Or
no, we actually have, according to the building permit that we received for the new police building, our planning director at the time gave us 3 years to tear that down. Now it creates and to put in a new parking lot. It creates some difficulty because of a reduced amount of parking that's available, especially a reduced amount of parking that's in a secured area. So the $550,000 is a delay, not a cut. There's a little history behind how that came about. We had received a bid from the contractor who was there for $525,000 to do that. We were excited about it. We thought, perfect, this is wonderful, we can finish it. However, there were some costs associated with that were not included. And that quickly increased by about $400,000. And I'm afraid I kind of gave it to the people that were involved and said, you just killed the project. I can't come up with another $400,000 on this. So what we're planning on doing is we have very talented in-house engineers. We're going to bid the project. We're going to look at if there's alternative ways that the building can be torn down, made secure, and then bid out the paving of the parking lot.
Did we have like a special event, bash our building, you sign a waiver and come smash the walls down? Like,
I've done that before with the firehouse.
Yeah.
And it's an awful lot of fun when you get a sledgehammer, and so
I mean,
we'll do something like that.
Hey, $500,000, I think we could figure out something to get a little poster on the wall and say, hey, you want to smash a police building? You know what I mean?
None of this sledgehammer stuff. We'll let people use the backhoe and start tearing at it.
I'm going to sign up. I'll tell you that right now.
I could just say, I guess the impetus behind my question was, can we just sit on that because of the COVID-19 crisis and a need to not spend money? Is that money that we can not spend for another 6 months until we maybe come out of this?
It's actually not included in this budget. We'll do some of the engineering work, but we're looking to the fiscal year 2022 budget. We might try to get, if we have an opportunity to do it much cheaper, we might try to find a way to tear the building down, at least get it gravel. But this budget doesn't include going forward with that project. I also wanted to point out and give the chief a chance to talk about this as well, because it's a change in the way we do policing. In item number 6202102, computer software, you're seeing an increase from $20,519 to $25,263. That includes a new program that allows e-citations. So Chief, will you take a minute and talk a little bit about that?
Yes, a couple of years ago, we started on a path with Salem PD to replace our report management system. That has come to fruition at this point, and we went live with a product called Mark 43 earlier this year. When they started that program, it was revealed that Lincoln City and one other agency in the consortium that belongs to the Salem PD report management group were the only two police departments in this group that didn't already have what was called report beam and e-citation capability, which also includes the ability to produce the Oregon State vehicle accident report with that system. In the proposal that Mark 43 gave us as this got started, they offered these two agencies to fund getting them live on report beam with our city. Somehow that fell on the back burner and didn't get taken care of. So in the last few weeks, we've managed to get that problem back on the front burner. The $7,830 that we show in our budget for that is more in line with our annual maintenance cost. The actual cost of ramp up on that is a little over $20,000, but Salem PD and Mark 43 are covering that remaining part of that $13,000. So, but this will increase our productivity on scene. Your driver's licenses, if you look at them, have barcodes on the back of them now, so that they can be scanned with this system, automatically fill out the citation, and then it's printed much like a receipt that you see printed at the grocery store. With all that information, all the officer has to do off of his mobile data terminal in his patrol car is type in the additional information of the location, the charge. Once those are loaded up, the system will automatically boot up the mandatory prima facie fines based on those, and then pick our court date. And then as soon as they hit print, that uploads into the software system and automatically transfers that citation to finance and municipal court without us having to physically have a document that has to be delivered there later. And so it just automates the whole system, should reduce the amount of time our officers are on scene for crashes and tied up when issuing citations. So it's very effective, and we're being fronted 2/3 the cost to get into the system.
Awesome, thank you. I have some questions for you, Chief. You know, I know that we've struggled in the past with being fully staffed, and we were seeing some high overtime rates due to that, and yet we're still, you know, it's going back up. You know, when do you think that would go down? You know, what causes that to remain so high? I have a few more questions after that, but I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, the thing that we're seeing is that as we become fully staffed, that means that you also have half of that staff working nights and weekends. So you have increased overtime when it comes to court time on their time off, in between shifts, or on their days off. So as I got into this chair, trying to figure out where that was going as we came fully staffed was kind of an unknown. Where we have seen potential in reducing that is scrutinizing more closely at some of our community outreach programs, which have, prior to now, a lot of that has been on officers' extra time and is paid duty time when they come in. But in order not to impact actual patrol shifts, we're bringing off-duty staff in to complete those events. So we'll be looking at those a lot more closely, such as the Citizens Academy. I know that's kind of on the chopping block, depending on how the economy goes in the next few months. But we have plans going forward to be able to scrutinize that and possibly alter shifts in advance of those events and work at reducing those overtime costs.
Thank you. Is that with the cadets program? I don't see that at the moment.
Coming up on the next page.
Okay, okay, thank you for that. And then the police, you know, we're scheduling $118,000 in vehicles. Is that something that could be pushed out another year?
I would strongly encourage against it. We're running our vehicles out there pretty good right now. We've actually got detective vehicles with way over 100,000 miles on them. We've got a code enforcement vehicle with 250,000 miles on it. And something to kind of keep in mind too is the detective vehicles, our administrative Tahoe, the vehicle that the code enforcement officer in are actually vehicles that we got free from when Lent collapsed. Right. We haven't replaced those yet.
Right.
But and then in the next year's budget, we actually did reduce our request going into next year's budget, one vehicle. So
I saw that. And then also, in one moment, Ms. Hinton, and then, you know, I remember you saying, and luckily, and so thankfully, that we have provided the Lincoln County School District with an officer, a school resource officer. Have we asked or looked at, hey, so we've had this for a while now, and now here's a little bit of a pinch. We asked them, could they pay in part or in full that officer's salary?
I have had that discussion with their emergency safety coordinator, Sue Graves. We have not entered into any specific conversations about that with the school administration or the school superintendent. I, you know, would express my somewhat disappointment that as they spooled this up with other agencies in the county, that they made no effort to come to us and even tell us that that was something that they were approaching. On the flip side of that, I will also tell you that I'm hesitant to go there for funding for that position because right now I have 100% control over that individual's day-to-day operation. So that in a pinch, as we have recently, like when I've got 5 people out on administrative leave because of our OAS, I immediately can pull my SRO back to patrol and have him help on the street, where if the school district is funding part, half, or whole of that, that becomes more their employee than mine.
All right. Thank you very much. And Ms. Hinton.
I know we aren't on page 15 yet, but Riley already brought up the vehicles. I'm just curious how your hybrid's going and if you're going to buy 2 more hybrids or electric, or what direction are you going?
So based on council's direction a couple years ago, we started looking at the hybrid patrol vehicle and actually purchased one in this budget cycle. In fact, it's due to be delivered this week or early next week. So it is a brand new technology to police work. We're one of only 2 or 3 agencies in the entire state that is making them operational on patrol. We don't yet know for sure how they're going to hold up or how they're going to perform under day-to-day patrol operations. But the one we have ordered, we had it built out as a full patrol car because we figured if we're going to test it, we're going to test it in the toughest environment we can put it in. If it turns out that it won't hold up under patrol stress, then we'll move that to a detective vehicle or an administrative vehicle and rotate one of the other SUVs into patrol. But right now, we're just going to test it for this next year, see how it holds up. We did get a deal on this because Ford messed up our order the year before. They actually gave us an extra $3,000 incentive to purchase a hybrid. We got $2,000 off of our standard gas version as well. But we'll look at this. If it works out really well, then we'll look at ordering those in the 21-22 budget. But this is going to be a test year for the hybrid, and you should see it on the road starting next week.
So the vehicles that you have scheduled for this budget are not that.
One is for the 21-22, or I mean the 2021 budget. We're not ordering another hybrid, no.
Okay. And then, Mr. Taylor, on a more general note, are we looking at our own fleet vehicles being hybrid total, pushing towards that hybrid, electric, whatever vehicles we need to replace?
We have looked at that. As a matter of fact, I've been in contact with both Ford and Chevrolet. The area where we buy most of our vehicles is in trucks, and we have not, and at least for them, they've said that they have not come out with their hybrid trucks for the kind of trucks we have.
$100 deposit for the Cybertruck. So also, I have a more general question too with the employee. Well, I'll wait till you get to page 15.
So one other comment on the hybrid, at least from our research on this, is that we're getting a good deal this year with the rebate that they gave us on the one we're currently getting. But in the future right now, hybrids are running $5,000 to $10,000 more a copy to purchase over than the standard gas engine. And based on what we're seeing, figures from Ford's testing at this point, it will take us 5 to 6 years in fuel savings to recoup the extra amount of money we spend to purchase the hybrid.
Okay.
All right. Okay, on page 15, the first item that I'd like to bring to your attention is item 6207007, Community Policing Program. This is, as the chief said, our community outreach programs, and it consists basically of 3 programs. The Citizens Academy, which has a direct cost of $1,500. He's also mentioned that the indirect cost, which is the overtime, and I've made a note to bring back what the actual cost is. Community outreach programs, which include National Night Out and Blue Christmas, for $3,000, and then the Summer Youth Outreach Camp, which is $1,500.
Are you saying that without the police, you're effectively canceling National Night Out?
No. However, that is one of those that we're looking at as could be affected out if the pandemic continues.
Right, but aside from that, are we looking to continue that?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Welke.
Thank you. Chief Palmer, you said that it would take 5 to 6 years to recoup the fuel savings. What is the lifetime of the typical patrol car?
4 to 6 years, depending on how hard it's used and which team that it's on. We try to run them out to about 100,000 miles, and that's generally in about a 5-year range.
So the life of the vehicle could expire before the cost savings.
It's possible. Again, it's a test vehicle. We have to see how it holds up and what the longevity of it is.
Okay, thank you.
The next item on page 15 that I'd like to bring to your attention is the radio communication maintenance, which we're seeing a drop of $15,000 from last year's budget. I'm going to ask the chief to talk about this, but maybe more importantly, ask Tony to jump in and talk about this.
All right, before Tony jumps in, I'll just put in my 2 bits worth. So the reason for the drop is, or actually a couple years ago, the reason for the increase was because our system had aged out and we were experiencing routine failures at various points in our communication system. So we had to increase the budget because of the amount of times that we were having to have Complete Wireless come over and either figure out what was going wrong and or replace parts. As a matter of fact, just a couple of weeks ago, we had a failure at Josephine Young that's costing us about $2,500 just to get back online. It pains me to do that because by July, I should have an all-new radio system up and running with the new building. So we're anticipating those costs will go down significantly because by the time Complete Wireless gets done with our build out this summer, we should have all new radio equipment across the city and in the new police department with all new antennas, and hopefully not have any need for significant amounts of maintenance, particularly in this first year when most of that stuff should fall under warranty.
Tony, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think that as we move forward with this system, the IT department is going to be better served or better prepared to maintain it because we're going to know exactly how it was put in, and I think it's a win all the way around. And eventually, I think we'll be able to. I don't know what the yearly maintenance is on it, but I think that we'll be able to continue to save money on the radio system and not having to call over Complete Wireless or other vendors to work on it. So this is a big deal.
The next item that I wanted to bring up is item number 6225004, the K-9 program expense. You'll notice that we budgeted $60,000 this year. We're not anticipating spending any of that. We're still in the process of choosing the officer and hiring the dog. So that's a carryover project from this year, and it includes both the I really do want to say hiring the dog, because if you have ever watched a police dog, they are the most amazing tools. One of the most fun, side note, one of the most interesting things to ever watch is police training with dogs, and how much training has to go into the police officer to understand the dog as a tool, like their weapons or their tasers. And when you watch the training, often at the beginning, the officer doesn't realize that that dog is there to be used like their other tools. And so it's a fascinating thing to watch. But anyway, so this is a carryover project. It includes both the acquiring of the animal and the maintenance for this first year. Okay. The next item that I wanted to point out to you is the emergency service program. This is a continuation of the council's priorities that they have for this budget year, and that is especially in the area of caches or storage units that we use for an emergency. Last year, we had funds budgeted for 3 and then some to be able to stock it. Instead of doing 3, we went ahead and bought 6 container units that are spread throughout the town. And then over the next 2 years, we will stock those. Of this $99,000, 90,000 of it is expected to go to stock these caches. Each cache will accommodate 1,500 individuals. They'll contain water, tents, flashlights, batteries, food. The food is the food that can be stored for not great food to eat, but it will keep you alive. Masks, trauma kits, shovels, picks, hand sanitizers, and several other items. The total cost to do this would be about $155,000, which we're looking at spreading out over a 2-year period.
Okay. Ms. Hinton.
I just want to say that although these containers that we have already were needed, there is some concern about them not holding up to the weather here, and that they sweat, and that all supplies won't be stored in the containers, which is counter to what we want them for. And so I would suggest that some of this money be used as match money in trying to find a grant to build the appropriate building to withstand the earthquake, for 1, and 2, be the appropriate type of building rather than the metal containers, but there's, wood or other materials that are more appropriate and that can breathe so they won't sweat. Otherwise, we won't be having the supplies that we need in case of an emergency, like the earthquake.
Okay.
I would say, if not proper things, can we just ensure that the metal containers that we do have or that we've purchased are properly vented, and have a real process to look at those to make sure that they're, able to breathe as needed.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Chief Palmer. Ken Murphy and I have already been discussing that issue. When I was with OSP and Lieutenant Broderick was with the Lint team, we've already experienced how things in a non-environmentally controlled metal container can deteriorate with the evidence that we tried to hold, and those with the Lint team had problems with that. So Ken is aware of that. We've actually inspected the interior of the high school cache to see how those things are holding up, and we are aware of that issue. But I agree with Riley that we'll be looking at the options of installing environmental controls on those metal cache containers, as opposed to the expense of putting up an actually stick constructed building that could house those, and see which one is going to be more cost effective for the long term.
Then lastly, Mr. Chandler, this isn't a general question. The employee wellness program, that's to be correct, that's what's charged to the community center, correct?
No, it's charged to the individual departments and then becomes a revenue for the community center.
But it is community center memberships.
Right.
Employee community center memberships.
Is there any desire, I understand that we're and I don't know how it works. Maybe you're doing it by the month. Maybe they're doing. I don't know how our employees are presented with membership. You know, I don't know if it's like for everybody. I don't know. Can you tell me how it is? Is it monthly memberships?
It's membership is available to all employees. If you recall, 4 budgets ago, we started charging the departments for those memberships so that it would so that the community center was not subsidizing those costs. The way it's determined is by usage. If an employee is not using that, then they're not charged. Their department's not charged. If they are using it, then the department does get charged.
So is there like a swipe or something, or it's recorded internally?
Yeah, well, yes, it's electronically that, and they get a membership card just like if a regular resident, if they were coming in and purchasing it.
You know, and on that same line, you know, I said earlier about asking other gym membership, you know, other gym memberships of, you know, SNAP or whoever. Can we do like a legitimate questionnaire for all the people, our own employees that are using it and the employees who have stopped using it, and it be anonymous of why they stopped using it, who they went to and why they did that? And then maybe we could entice them, you know, build something or have something in which those people could come back to us in a way.
Well, interestingly enough, yes, we can do that. However, the more employees that use it, the greater cost it will be to the city.
But then, you know, are we charging just the employee, or do their family get memberships for free?
Their families get a pass as well.
So, I mean,
so, you know, so if we're going to work to try to increase the membership, I'm not sure the employees is where I would focus my efforts, because that just increases the cost to the city.
Sure, just as a general questionnaire of why did you stop using it is, I mean, I get what you're saying, you know, and I don't know if the casino is charging their employees and their family members. I believe that there was a little bit of vetting there, that yes, you can get a membership, but your spouse and children or whoever, you have to still pay a little bit. I would look to see about that as far as, you know, full on, you know, and it's payroll deducted or something like that.
Okay.
Nancy? Can't hear you, Nancy.
Sorry, there. So this is a question for the chief, and I know he wasn't there for the shooting, but do you think the dog would have been helpful if we had him sooner?
It's hard to say, but had it been on scene, it certainly would have absolutely been another tool that we could have employed.
Okay. And then and then this is for Ron, why are we paying for family members to go to the gym for employees?
That's a program that started long before I got here, and it's not one that we have looked to change.
If we're looking at cutting costs, that might be one of the ones to cut.
Right, and that's what I was saying, as a discounted, you know, not full, but something, you know.
With the benefits that employees get already, I think that percentage-wise, they're getting quite a bit.
One of the reasons is to encourage employee health, which reduces our medical costs as we are self.
Absolutely.
Our insurance rates are determined by our experience.
That's not to their family, though. I mean, I get what you're saying, but I'm talking about.
Well, it is to the family. If the family's on the insurance, then their health impacts our rates as well.
Okay. Yes, I see. Miss Nancy, did you have anything else?
No, I'm done.
Thank you. Miss Walke?
I just wanted to remind you that we were going to take a break between 7:30 and 7:45.
Thank you. Yeah, let's do that. I know we got dispatch center, you know, this, Mr. Chandler, can you finish the police and then we'll go, I mean, dispatch, I don't know.
Yeah, I have just one other item. I'm sorry I stopped the share. Let me bring that back up real quick. It's just capital. 2 items on the purchase of capital, 2 automobiles, which you've already discussed. And then we've talked, interestingly enough, about employees that use the community center. There are some good reasons for the police officers not to use the community center. So one of the capital costs is $10,000 to put in some exercise equipment in the new building in the locker room area.
Is that going to be billed like using the gym membership though?
No.
Is there, I mean, any way to, I don't know. Okay. All right. Any other questions with the police before we stop and go into dispatch? I mean, we'll take a break. Anybody else have any questions? All right. I would like to give us a 10-minute break here at 7:50.
You got somebody, Counselor Anderson. Looks like Chester.
Oh, okay. Mr. Norikis, yes, sir. And you got to turn on your mic, Mr. Anderson. You got to turn on your microphone. Can't hear you. So,
How about now?
yes, we can. Thank you, sir.
Chief Palmer, how has the economic lockdown affected work for your staff?
So the overall calls for service are down somewhat, probably 25 to 30%. What we are finding is that the calls for service we are going on have ramped up in escalation as far as violence, I guess would be the term. Our domestics are a little more intense. Obviously, we had our OIS that, who knows whether that would have come or not. And then the COVID response, now I'm working up the stats on that, should have them later this week. But we have been spending a considerable amount of time since this ramped up with the governor's orders, kind of chasing our tail around the community, trying to figure out whether people in short-term rentals are there legally and in exemption of the governor's order, or if they're in violation. I am pleased to say that probably between 90 and 99% of the checks that we are doing are legally exempt from the governor's order, that people and the management teams are in compliance. But that's probably our biggest source of activity over the last few weeks is chasing that. So, but as a general rule, our 911 calls are down slightly, and our administrative calls are down about 30%.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, let's, I'm gonna do a 10-minute recess. We'll start back up at let's say 8:10, 13 minutes. So, you can turn your cams off, and then we'll see you at 8:10. while I chew. I know. It's okay. It's okay. All right. I think we're all ready, set to go. Mr. Chandler, if you're ready, and we'll go when you're back on.
I'm back on. Let me get the page all set up.
Ron, are we about to move to dispatch? Is that what we're going to do?
We are.
If you don't mind, I'd just like to take a half a second here. I know last year it came up at the last second, and I don't want to get deep into stats and tie some things up, but I would like to point out a couple of significant things. Last year we took one of our officers and designated him as part of a street crimes unit and working in conjunction with an officer from Newport PD. Newport PD struggled with their budget, and their guys kind of been off and on again, but they've done some really significant work. But I'd like to just point out that in our reporting period this last year, our traffic stops increased by 860 over this last year. But the thing that blew me away was that our burglaries dropped 54% in this last year. We went from 146 burglaries in 2017 to 167 in 2018. In calendar year 2019, we were down to 76 burglaries. And I want to attribute that in my mind that it was a direct relationship to the amount of work and the impact that our street crimes officer had focusing on property crimes and the higher visibility that our day-to-day patrols are having by making traffic stops and interacting with the people that are involved with these crimes that made that impact.
Okay. Mr. Chair, are you ready?
Yes, sir. And also, Mr. Palmer, thank you very much. And on behalf of the citizens, thank you. And it's a wonderful bit of news. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Okay, so we are moving to dispatch. I took a few minutes while you were away to just kind of highlight the things that I want to bring up. That seems to be easier than trying to use the Zoom pointer. But first item I want to note is under the area of salaries, $489,819. That includes converting a part-time dispatcher into a full-time dispatcher, which would increase which is a total compensation increase of about $50,000. Under the item of retirement, 6106014, of that $115,686 increase, 84% of it, or $97,724, is due to the PERS buyback program. The next item I wanted to identify on this page is under page 16. Or on page 16 is item number 6202102, which is under computer software. There's a $2,760 payment on that. It's an every other year payment. That is for the text to 911 computer software program. Okay. Those
had that, Mr. Chandler, have we had anybody use that this year or in the last 2 years?
Chief?
Yes, it's not a frequent occurrence, but we have had, I would estimate probably since we've implemented text 911, a half a dozen usages of it.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions? Those are just some of the highlights I wanted to mention. Are there any questions that you have on page 16? Okay. On page 17, the thing that I just want to point out is the no capital equipment for the dispatch this year. we kind of teased them, they got a new building, don't ask for anything more. Mr. Chair, that covers the dispatch, unless there are other questions.
I'm not seeing any.
Okay. That then moves us to municipal court. Couple things to note on this. One of the changes that we're proposing in this is to increase the court clerk position from part-time to full-time. That would be an increase of $11,000. Debbie, do you want to explain that a little bit?
This would be a temporary, kind of an employee-specific increase, and I don't know how long she might be employed here, but if and when she decided to leave, we would revert it back to a part-time basis. We've had an awful lot of turnover in our court, and a lot of the follow-up work hasn't been done for years and years, and Stacy's been doing a really great job of making some progress on that, and would like to keep her. She's expressed some interest in working full-time, and because of the improvements that she has made in that court and the turnover that we've had and the backlog, I'd like to make this a temporary change.
Any questions on, oh no, I'm sorry, two other things on municipal court. You'll notice under item 610-6014, you have a cost that increased from $6,189 to $15,535. Of that amount, 72% of that increase is from PERS.
Mr. Chandler, can I, just to be clear, for the cost associated with the overtime with the officers, are we getting a breakdown as far as what that is driving to court or not, and the cost that is, and specifically against the cost of a court of record?
Yeah, we can. So in February, first part of February and of January, the City Council had a very wonderful and long work session. And one of the topics that came up was expanding our municipal court. I didn't get a chance to talk to Richard today, but I see that he is on the line. He was going to discuss this with the City Council, and so I'm not sure, Richard, if you wanted to do that tonight or wait for another opportunity.
I think it'd be best to handle it at a council meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Oxenholt.
My question, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
My question is there enough work for a full-time position? Just because somebody wants to go to full-time, I mean, is there enough work for her?
Well, part of the reason we wouldn't make this a permanent change is in the long term, no. In the short term, shorter term with the backlog that we have, yes.
Are you talking 3 months, 6 months?
No, it would 3-4 years. I mean, it's.
Jeffy's like, ah, yeah.
Okay.
All right, that moves us to streets. Okay, so I'm now on page 21 of the budget. First thing I want to point out is the transient room tax, 4105010. And note on that transient room tax counts for 98% of the revenue that's available for street operation maintenance. Again, the transient room tax is the most elastic revenue source that we have. Will fluctuate. This is one area where the time it takes for our economy to recover.
Taylor, what page are you on?
Can I say something here?
Just one second. Are we skipping dispatch, municipal court, dispatcher, abatement?
We skipped page 19. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's what I'm asking, Mr. Chandler. Yeah.
Oh, property abatement.
Well, we skipped over 19.
Debbie, do you want to talk about property abatement?
Last year during the budget process, we wanted to, maybe I'm behind a year, the year before, in the 18-19 year, we wanted to have some money available for property abatement. The code requires that you actually set up a separate fund for this. So this would be code compliance when we actually initiate it and pay for the repairs. I think the one example that we did, don't we have a lien on the property? I think at some point that we would get it paid back,
we do.
If I remember right. So it's kind of what it's for.
Okay. Ms. Walke?
Thank you. I had a question back at municipal court when we were talking about the expense of the court clerk going to full-time. Didn't either in your response to Deanna's questions or at the beginning of the meeting, we talked about a big increase because of the work she's been doing?
Yes, Deanna had submitted a question about why the fines revenues had gone up significantly, and we have had an increase. The year-to-date number of citations that have been written has increased, but it's also the more promptly you process citations, I think the better chance you'll get your money. If it just kind of falls through the crack and you don't do follow-up on it for several months, you tend to have less of a response. If it never gets sent to a collection agency, you get less of a response. So the follow-up work that she's doing now that we haven't done in a long time, I think is really paying off.
Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome.
Did that cover page 19, or is there more explanation that needs to be done on that?
I think that's good. Thank you, Mr. Chandler. Thank you, Debbie.
Okay, page 21, which is street operations. As I mentioned, the street operations is completely dependent on transient room tax. If the pandemic continues and it takes longer for our economy to recover, this budget would be severely affected. Down at the bottom, retirement 610-6014. Of that increase, the purse pay down portion is $75,759, which is 89% of the increase. There are no changes in the personnel under the street operations. The street operations is pretty straightforward. It's not significantly different from last year. So what I wanted to do is just jump straight to some capital by going to page.
Wait.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Sorry. Yes. I was reading. I apologize.
That's all right. I just wanted to make a statement here that we are on the lookout for a $415,000 check from the county for the transfer of Logan Road, and as I understand it, maybe Debbie can explain it, but it doesn't go into the budget until we cash it. So, and we've asked for it to be its own separate line item so it can be used for the purpose for which we received it.
Yes, for those of you who are not aware, we have just completed the process, with the exception of receiving a $425,000 check, of having the Logan Road transferred from county ownership to city ownership. At this point, the budget does not reflect the use of those funds because, quite frankly, we haven't determined how we're going to use those funds. We know that there is some work that needs to be done associated with the culvert, the area by Saliseed Drive. These funds are meant to cover that. Part of what we'll be doing this year, but it'll be in-house, is putting that plan together. Once we know for sure and have everything put together, then we'll take it back to the city council for an amendment to the budget to approve it. And so it'll simply just end up as a part of a beginning fund balance in one of our capital accounts for streets.
Thank you. Can we, sorry, excuse me. I'm looking at the cost of the street lighting. You know, in this pandemic, I had asked, I think earlier in another meeting, about our reduction in street lighting and what that would do, and have we looked at reducing costs, non-personnel, non-project, but other operating things, like this thing's printed in ink, in color ink, you know, that's probably costlier than paper, you know, black and white ink. So have we looked at the street lighting?
Lila, do you want to address street lighting? I know this is a big one for you.
Can't hear you, Lila. Still can't hear you. I don't know. Somebody text her.
I know one thing that she did talk about with me is at some point looking at maybe funding the street lighting with a fee. That's not in the proposed budget, but that is one idea that she did bring up.
Because we pay for every street light on the highway, right?
I believe so.
So what, I mean, you know what I mean?
Lila, are you there?
Do you want me to try to call her on my cell phone, Ron? Oh,
I'm working on it. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you now. All right.
Hey, thank you. Trying to do this via the phone didn't work very well. Yes, I've been looking at that 200,000 and PP&L. I've actually been doing a pretty extensive look into doing all LED, and there are Energy Trust grants, and Jody Casper had brought some of that Energy Trust information to me, and so they've done an analysis, and it looks really good. And they would be Pacific Power and Light. Mr. Chandler and I had a talk with them, and they are looking at a program January in 2021. And so we were waiting to see what they come up with, but it sounds like the tariffs would be better. We'd be able to do the LED lighting all the way through town, and they're smart lights. There are other things that you can add to them. So it's a pretty good program. And then we'd also look at, looking at other funding for that 200,000 and getting it out of the street budget. Because I've said for years, my street budget is for the city is just going to be street lighting eventually. So I am working on that, and I can bring that to you in a future workshop.
I mean, thank you. Wonderful. And I'm excited to have LEDs with smart lighting. And if you could define smart lighting, they would have sensors to turn on when cars and things would pass by them?
Yes. Yeah, they work really well.
And are we able to turn off particular, individual lights in an effort to reduce costs?
No, No, it's run mainly by Pacific Power and Light, and there's liabilities with not having lights on certain streets. We've had accidents on the highway before, and it becomes a lawsuit essentially.
Sure, but lights go on and off on their own already. I mean, I can't tell you the number of lights that I see go on and off. I mean, can we talk to Pacific Power about some sort of reduction between, I mean, we're just trying to save money,
Yes, and those are the conversations that we are having. So we'll just follow up and give you a good report on that.
Wonderful. And then Ms. Walke?
Thank you. I would encourage you to consult with Chief Palmer about safety concerns before any street lighting is reduced. That's a big concern of mine. I think street lighting is a safety issue.
I've walked the majority of this entire town at 2 a.m. and know specifically how terrifying certain areas can be. So and I'm not a little person, so I know how that is, and I understand what you're saying. Lila, can I also ask you, the street operations, are they the ones responsible for cleaning parking lots?
Yeah, actually we do clean the parking lots along with the Parks Department mows them, but we sweep them with the sweeper.
So I've seen many times where they use the fire hydrant to blow off sand and debris, and I don't see a water charge on this.
We calculate it as water loss because we're not, you can't really meter that, and so we account for it in our water loss.
Is that the most?
Other than that, we try to do that.
To spray off, we're taking a loss to clean sand off parking lots with potable water. I don't know if that's the best use of that.
Yeah, well, we have the new sweeper, so I will look into that further. And 15th Street, Southwest 15th, or Northwest 15th is the one that I know they've used water on. And they also have a really nice brush piece of equipment that they use. But I'll look into that with our crews again.
Yeah, I've seen it at more than one beach exit.
Okay, definitely look into that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, there is a couple other things that I wanted to mention on this. One other thing I wanted to mention on the page. Under contracted services, that includes the hiring of a consultant for our systems development charge updates, surveys for high school drive, title reports for easements and miscellaneous services. The reason I bring this up is that when we talk about high school drive, these are also a reflection of carrying these projects over because they were delayed to make those cuts for this year.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for street operations?
Okay, under street capital on page 23, item number 6320201. There's $50,000 in that. That is $20,000 for street lighting LED upgrades and $30,000 for the traffic calming equipment. Specifically, that's the radar speed signals that you see put up throughout town. Those have become a very, very effective deterrent to speed. And interestingly enough, if you get fast enough, the little light in the center of it begins to flash. And I've had several calls asking if am I going to get a ticket. I'm always a little hesitant to say we haven't started doing that yet because I kind of want to say yes, slow down. But they are they're one of the most effective speed deterrents that I've seen in my career.
Just for the record, they only go up to 10 miles up past the posted speed limit. That is when they stop telling you the speed. just had to check it. Ms. Walke.
I just wanted to say I love the thank you when you're going the speed limit or below. They're great tools.
We do still rotate them, although not often. And we do have a waiting list of people who've called in and asked if they could be put on their streets. Okay, I am moving to page 24. This is the street operation forecast. Again, let's see if I can do this. All right. Again, as with the general fund, we have the same issue we're dealing with. And that is that the transient room tax, or the revenues, are expected to increase by 3% per year, yet our expenditures are increasing by over 4%, especially beginning in fiscal year 22-23. Ultimately, what you see is that your change to fund balance goes into the red and stays in the red, dropping your ending fund balance by the time we hit 27-28. It's forecasted to be just above $400,000. That's not sustainable, and ultimately it will catch up with us. And so, like the general fund, this is a fund we should be watching. Please note one other thing change that we've made is you see all of these zeros, right? No, that's not it. Is you see all of these zeros, motor vehicle tax fund. One of the things that we did beginning in fiscal year 2017-18 is that we moved all of the motor vehicle tax funds over to capital projects and not operational. We were doing that mostly through transfers. At that time, we made that change in part so that we could continue our overlay program, where our goal is to overlay all streets over a 20 to 25-year period.
Mr. Chandler, I had asked earlier in another meeting, again, about the possibility, and I understand it would take a vote, but of increasing the TRT to 10%. I would like to propose it to be used for street, as it isn't sustainable, and that, our tourism does take a very large toll on our roads and street infrastructure, and feel like that could be a way in which it is a long-term funding source.
I need to look at something here. I don't think we are allowed any longer to assess TRT for streets. We have it because our original 8% was put in before the state legislated what you can spend TRT monies on.
Okay.
When we changed it from 8% to 9.5%, the only.
I think still going to 10% is something that's very positive, a good topic to talk about, and then changing funds this way.
It just can't help streets.
Well, that's fine. We can, do what we're doing as far as pushing money the other way. But I feel like, Seaside they're at 10%, and they're the ones who, are mimicking for this. We're talking about the refund possibility. So Seaside has it and it's doing well. I think Lincoln City, needs to have that conversation.
We will certainly look into that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions on this page before I leave it and go to page 25? I'm sorry, I am now going to page 27. And the reason I'm doing that is that when you look at the capital projects, they're contained in different funds. They're contained in the Street Capital Fund, the Transportation Development Fund, the Storm Drainage Development Fund, the Highway 101 Improvement Fund, and the Intersection Improvement Fund. It's a little bit easier for me just to go through the projects since they're all capital funds. So looking at page 27, a couple things to point out in the revenue section. Let me enlarge that a little bit.
Hold on, I don't know what's going on there. You got all squelchy.
Can you see that okay? Okay. Note that there is a state grant of $1,039,316 in the revenue portion. That is a grant that we have received to do one of our major projects, which is a sidewalk pedestrian biking path along Highway 101 between Neatsu and West Devils Lake Road. And that project is in the works and going forward in its design. As I mentioned, we have moved the motor vehicle tax revenue that we receive to become a revenue source for capital projects. That's reflected in here. We're estimating that we will receive $650,239, and we are also continuing to make contributions from the general fund to the street capital funds to continue that overlay project. We're down a little bit this year, quite a bit. It begins to level off. This year we're estimating a transfer of $275,000. Okay. I'm going to go through these, and then any details with it, I'll just turn that over to Lila to be able to explain a little bit about these projects. On page 27, we have the High School Drive, Southeast 48th to Highway 101, which includes ADA sidewalk improvements for $310,000. We have, if you recall, this is one that we moved forward from this year. Same with the South 3rd Street flashing beacon and plaza of $310,000, as well as the Northeast 14th sidewalk, Highway 101 to Orr with sidewalk on the north side of the street at $800,000. Northwest Keel and Northwest Jetty improvements, $200,000. We're currently working with the state for West Devils Lake Bridge replacement. I may have given you some wrong information. Debbie and Lila will have to correct me on this. If the $1,039,000 was for the West Devils Lake Bridge project or the Highway 101 project. But we've been working with the state in replacing that bridge. We're managing it for them. Most of the funds are coming from West Devils Lake. And then we have the Northeast 28th. It says storm reroutes. That should be reroute for $30,000. Lila, do you want to take it from there and talk a little bit about these projects?
Sure. So the High School Drive project, we've pushed out a little bit. And that was fixing the intersection at Highway 101 and High School Drive, and then putting sidewalk infill on that south side. Then we had the path from Northeast Mass to Regatta. That was a new project that we were trying to, get that whole path from Northeast 14th as close to the highway as we can get all the way around to 22nd Street. And then I had Tacoma to Taco Bell, and we designed that, and the price of that project had gone from $800,000 to $1.4 million was our estimate. And part of the reason for that increase is the storm system that we have to replace, because there's essentially ODOT storm system is undersized and not in good shape at all. It's really, really old. And so what they're requiring us to put in all of that storm system. So we're really not becoming a sidewalk project anymore. It's a huge project. And let's see. So that one we took off the list for now. We'll try and look at funds for that later. And we're still continuing with design on all of these, and these are all in-house designs. We pay for a little bit of survey. And then we also have some survey equipment we can do some ourselves. And the Southeast 3rd Street flashing beacon, we're doing that in-house. And so the 10,000 was some survey money. And let's see. And then I had mentioned Northeast 14th already. And we're trying to take that all the way to Port, which is close to Spring Lake on the north side of Northeast 14th Street. And then the Northwest Keel and Jetty storm improvements, this started in Rhodes End. And what we want to do is get a geotech to look at some of the areas out there to see what type of storm drainage we can do, because the project really is almost like a $400,000 project. And we just don't have that much in storm. So we're looking at all of Rhodes End because it wasn't part of the Stormwater Master Plan. And so we have staff working on that right now. And then we'll use some of this money for geotech investigation, and looking also at the bridge or the culvert replacement that we'll be getting some funds for, and Salasee improvements, so other storm improvements out that way. And let's see, and then we go down to the West Devils Lake Road bridge replacement, and that is underway as far as design. So we're getting close on that one. I think we'll build that probably later this year, if not into next year. We have some in-water work windows that we have to do. And then we have the Lincoln Square project, which is the ramps that we were doing with ODOT. So half of it was ODOT, half of it was the city. And as you can see, that's underway and going to be completed. Well, we have less traffic, which is wonderful. So any questions on those, please go ahead.
I did say that I got ahead of myself. The 1,039,000, that is for the West Devils Lake bridge improvement. The other amount I'll get to in just a minute.
Mr. Mark, he has a question.
Oh, I just wanted to throw out that of all the things that I'm seeing on the budget, if we need, these seem like prime candidates with some exceptions, notably the West Devils Lake Road bridge replacement, to, if we could push them back, and I'm also thinking the street overlay projects, you know, if those could just be pushed back a year or two, that goes a long way to getting us the funds that we need for possible emergency relief, I would think, and maybe allowing us to continue the PERS, which we do is a savings for us. So it's just my thought. I mean, a lot of cases, what we're doing by not doing these projects is simply maintaining the status quo. You know, we're not putting in a sidewalk on a stretch of road that hasn't had a sidewalk forever. So it doesn't really change much. That's just my thought.
I would note the primary revenue source in this fund is from the motor vehicle tax, and that is a restricted revenue. We can't use it for anything other than streets.
The area, though, where it could be of assistance is that in not transferring funds from the general fund.
Ms. Hinton?
I want to ask about that sidewalk on the highway, that partnership project front to Niatsu. That's a critical connector for pedestrian traffic there. It's a dangerous.
Can I say something about that one?
Please.
That one is a grant, and we do have a little bit of our street funds going to West Devils Lake Road intersection in that project, and then the tribal council has funding for part of that too. They have about $320,000 toward that project. So it's not funded by the city. We list it in here. Just like West Devils Lake Road bridge replacement, that is funded by ODOT and their bridge group. And so we're managing these projects for them.
Okay, so we won't see a dollar amount on here. It's not listed. It will not cost the city anything. Is that what you're saying? I thought we were cost sharing with that one, with the tribe and ODOT?
We are a little bit, but it's a really minor amount. I think I have it at like 135,000. And that's what that one transportation fund was for the north end improvement, and we essentially collected that for ODOT. Okay. And so the money that we were going to spend is from that fund.
Is it a project for this next year?
Yes, we're in design and discussions right now, and then we will be bringing that to council as soon as we get, that's like the 30% design, and then we'll be out we have a lot of public outreach to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Look, can I ask you, I mentioned it to Ron before, I'm part of the Oregon Coast Trail GAP subcommittee, and I think it was Jenna Bremer with ODOT was talking about the fact that the Schooner Creek Bridge has coinciding gap issues with both the Oregon Coast Bike Trail and the Oregon Coast Hiking Trail, and that there was some funding for some type of footbridge over that. And I know that we're working on that, the cathodization of that at the time. Did that ever get back to you about the funding for that?
I'm always looking for funding, and I didn't hear that they had much funding for that, but yeah, we're looking at it. We're reviewing the plans.
Yeah, so when I was in that meeting, she said that there's only a few places on this middle section, the Central Coast, that have funding for these kind of pedestrian bridges. One's by the Otter Rock Loop, where it cuts, by Whale Cove, here at Schooner Creek Bridge, and then another one farther south. But I failed to bring that up again, so I apologize for that. But that's a pedestrian bridge there, so just giving it to you.
Yes, definitely. We have, I think Urban Renewal did a really cool concept design there, and that's definitely been on the list for a really long time.
Cool.
The other thing with all these projects that we're designing, and we're designing them in-house, is when everything gets back to whatever our new normal is, they always have incentives for transportation projects. Yeah. And so we want ours shovel ready. So we're continuing with our designs as far as we can go.
Cool. That's great to hear. Thank you.
Okay, if you go to page 31, you'll see this is for the Highway 101 Improvement Project. The total amount of this project is coming from two different funds. This one is contributing $2,851,500. The other one is contributing $140,000. So the total cost of the Highway 101 pedestrian biking path from West Devils Lake Road to Neatsu is $2,991,500. Of that amount, $2,487 is coming from ODOT, and $360,000 is coming from a Solicit tribe grant, and we pick up the rest, which would be $144,500 would be our contribution to this project. That, and we manage it. Any questions regarding that project? Okay, Mr. Chair, I said that we were going to try to get through all the way through sewer. We got to streets, and it's 9 minutes.
Yeah. Let's just cut it. I mean, unless anybody wants to keep going. I mean, I always appreciate, like, we're going to go this far, and then, we're a very inquisitive bunch, and so I appreciate your patience, and thank you for not getting mad at us for always asking you questions and preventing you from reaching your goals. It won't come out on your eval. But anybody else have thoughts? No? All right. I think, so let's schedule, I'm sorry?
Meeting is May 4th, which will be...
Rick has some, Mr. Mark. You're muted, buddy.
I could keep going a little while if you wanted, but I don't want to wreck everybody's night.
I think being at home at 9 o'clock is probably, pushing it. It's not the same as being in the bright lights of the studio.
Mr. Chair, one more final thing. Our next meeting.
Wait, let's.
I was gonna vote to call it a night, and I also wanted to see if we're gonna be starting at 6 or if we're gonna start earlier to get things.
I'm gonna ask to start earlier, but Mr. Chandler is gonna let us know what his plan.
Well, that's what I was gonna do. It's May 4th. The urban renewal budget is now done. This meeting isn't scheduled to begin until 6. Would you like to meet earlier?
Yes. Can I challenge all of us, since it's the 4th, and I'm not by any means a Star Wars fan. It would be hilarious if we all dressed up like Star Wars characters. I'll do the Princess Leia buns if you guys agree. I mean, come on, it's pretty close.
I got a costume
like
already.
Lila, what's her name? I don't even know. But anyway,
Leia.
Leia, yes. May 4th, at what time, Mr. Chandler?
Riley, I picked you for Chewbacca.
Oh yeah, there you go. I forgot. 4 o'clock, you said?
Well, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, you guys choose.
5.
5?
5 p.m. Okay.
All right.
I ended up with
5. Everybody with the show of hands is 5. Okay. Everybody with a real hand. Is that all right? Everybody all good? Good with that? All right.
I ended up with over 5 pages of notes. So Debbie and I will go through these and send out to you any information that came from those notes, including changes you have wanted to make on the budgets and the impact of how that would affect the budget.
Okay.
I think Nancy has her hand up.
Oh, thanks, Susan. Sorry, Nancy. I was in a different window.
Voting. He told us to put our hand up.
Oh, yeah, I meant this.
That was it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time, and we'll see you on the 4th. And I'll be looking like Leia, I guess.
Oh, hang on. We advertised to do a public hearing for the budget and a public hearing for state revenue share. Can we just go ahead and do that so I don't have to re-advertise it? Just open the hearing, and if there's no comments, then close it.
All right, I'd like to open the floor for public hearing. All right.
On the budget?
On the budget for the 2020-21.
No emails.
No emails? All right. Looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
A motion.
Second.
Second. Who is this? Who's the second?
That was Mitch.
Mitch.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Parsons. All right. All in favor to close the public hearing, say aye.
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 All right. All opposed? All right. Debbie, you're wonderful. Thank you for catching that.
And then we also need to do a public hearing for the state revenue shares if anyone wants to provide input on how we should spend those monies.
I'd like to open the floor for public to provide comment on that. All right. I'm looking for a motion to close the floor for the, what is it again? Revenue sharing?
State revenue sharing, yes.
So moved.
Second.
Good. You guys are that quick now. All right. I don't know who the second was though.
I don't know who the first.
Susan, second.
Who said me?
First was Susan.
The second. I was the second.
The first second.
Yeah, right.
Who?
All right. Any discussion? All right. All in favor say, sorry, what was that, Kathy?
First of all, we already had one public hearing earlier this evening. Wasn't that the one that took care of one of those public hearings?
That was you.
No, we had a public hearing for urban renewal.
Okay. So then who moved?
I thought it was Kevin.
Kevin did.
Okay, great, thanks.
Ms. Steer, are we ready to vote?
Yes, thank
All
you.
right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right. So that motion, good. And
I
then
couldn't hear Dick, but I saw his lips moving.
Oh.
He's off.
My hand is up. Wait a minute.
I don't see it, but I see you now. Okay.
My hand is up. Wait.
Okay.
I just, because that's a revenue and shouldn't we be doing it roll call?
Oh, possibly.
Well, it's not voting on spending money. It's voting on closing a public hearing.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Anything else that we need to cover? That's it.
Thank
Comments? You. Okay, great. Thank you. So we're at I. Comments from Budget Committee members?
Thank you, Riley.
Thank you. You guys are great. All right. So let's adjourn this meeting at 9 o'clock. Thank you guys very much and have a great evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.